The Japanese government is currently on high alert. Recently, Japan has been conducting a large-scale investigation into land purchases by Chinese capital. This is because it was confirmed that the land purchased by Chinese people is located near US military bases and self-defense force bases. Japan seems to consider this a national security issue. Let's take a closer look at this topic today. Let's get right into it. The Japanese government has decided to conduct a full-scale reinvestigation of the ownership of about 13,400 uninhabited islands across Japan. The reason for this is that these uninhabited islands, which were often neglected due to their low ownership value, have become targets for foreign capital, especially Chinese capital. The Japanese government has come to see this as a threat. The trigger for this was a certain island in Okinawa. In 2023, a Chinese woman posted a video on social media revealing that she had purchased an uninhabited island in Okinawa. But this spread widely through social media. The problem was that the purchased island, called Yana Island, was located relatively close to US military facilities in Okinawa, which also serve as US military bases in Japan. This was a major issue. After learning about this, the Japanese government began investigating other uninhabited islands in different regions. It turned out that this was not the only case where Chinese capital had purchased uninhabited islands near military facilities. For example, on Kasasa Island in Setone, Chinese capital had also acquired land and was pushing for development. Although Kasasa Island is not uninhabited, it has a very small population and is about 20 kilometers from the US Iwakuni base and about 50 kilometers from the Maritime Self-Defense Force Kure base. The Japanese government judged that in the case of uninhabited islands, it is difficult to monitor outside activities, so there is a possibility that they could be used as intermediate bases for things like filming military facilities with drones, smuggling, or illegal entry. The Japanese government will begin its full reinvestigation of the ownership of about 13,400 uninhabited islands by focusing first on those key to national security. The Ogasawara Islands, which have many border islands, Okinawa, where US military and self-defense force facilities are concentrated, and Setone, where there has been controversy over foreign capital purchasing land, are the primary targets of the investigation. But the main issue was that China is not only buying real estate in Japan. Similar patterns have been observed in the United States and South Korea as well. According to the US Department of Agriculture, in 2023, the demand for farmland by Chinese companies in the US reached 1,122 square kilometers, which is about 130 times the size of Uaido. Specifically, US farmland is concentrated in 5 states, about 500 square kilometers in Texas, 179 in North Carolina, 173 in Missouri, 133 in Utah, and 51 in Florida, accounting for 93% of the total. All of these areas are classified as strategically important for national security. For example, Texas is a place where big tech companies like OpenAI and Tesla are making large-scale investments and running businesses. In fact, there are concerns in the US that the increase in Chinese land ownership in these areas could lead to industrial espionage, supply chain disruptions, and the leakage of strategic technologies. North Carolina is home to key US military special operations and strategic transport bases, and Missouri is a military aerospace production hub centered around St. Louis. Some might think this is an overreaction. There are 30 locations of Chinese-owned farmland within a 160-kilometer radius of US military bases, and 14 of these are located in counties that have military bases, according to the US Department of Agriculture. The New York Post even reported that near 19 US military bases, there are farms owned by Chinese capital. In many cases, the distance between these farms and the military bases is only a few kilometers to several dozen kilometers. Among these is Fort Liberty in North Carolina, which is home to the Joint Special Operations Command, the 18th Airborne Corps, and the 82nd Airborne Division. Camp Pendleton in San Diego, California, is home to the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force Headquarters and the 1st Marine Division. MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida, houses U.S. Central Command, which oversees the Middle East, and Special Operations Command, responsible for special operations. Chinese-owned farms are very close to U.S. military bases, and experts say equipment like radar, infrared equipment, drones, and wiretapping tools could easily monitor them. Even just observing transport aircraft from these farms can reveal base activities. Korea faces similar issues, with the Chinese government buying 11 plots worth $29.9 billion, one only 1 to 1.5 kilometers from key security sites like Itaewon, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and planned U.S. military and embassy locations. Chinese-owned land is also growing near important sites like Jeju Naval Base and Pyeongtaek U.S. military base. Foreign-owned land near military sites risks information leaks, surveillance, and possible military use during war. There are security risks, but the Chinese government says they bought the land to secure land for diplomatic use, rental income, or investment. Of course, as soon as this news broke, state legislatures in dozens of states like Texas and Florida either passed or considered passing laws restricting Chinese companies from purchasing such land. If President Trump holds a National Security Council meeting in 2025 and officially bans China's purchase of farmland, it looks like China's plans will end in failure. However, there's a reason we can't simply feel reassured watching China's actions. It's because of China's national intelligence law. Through this law, China stipulates that all organizations and citizens must cooperate with and support the country's intelligence activities. In addition, Chinese intelligence agencies have the authority to request necessary data and technical support while carrying out national security and intelligence gathering tasks. The problem is that this law is not only effective within mainland China. No, that's not the case. The international community has consistently raised concerns that Chinese companies or Chinese nationals operating overseas may be required to cooperate with the Chinese government's intelligence gathering activities. Of course, not all Chinese companies or individuals are involved in intelligence activities. However, the very existence of a legal obligation to cooperate is cited as a key reason why countries like the United States and Japan remain wary. Third, this perception also underlies the sensitive reactions of the US and Japan to the issue of land purchases near military facilities. On the surface, it may look like investment by private companies or real estate transactions, but security authorities are looking at the situation from a broader perspective. When foreign capital influences key infrastructure like military bases, ports, airports, communications facilities, and power plants, the risk of information leaks rises. Growing concerns now include cyber attacks and hacking. Major countries see modern information warfare as driven by data, networks, and intelligence, not traditional weapons. In this context, China's national intelligence law is closely watched by security authorities in the United States, Japan, and others. The United States and Japan are now evaluating Chinese land purchases and business activities not just economically, but also for national security. These concerns have grown recently. On June 3rd, the Five Eyes Alliance, comprising the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, issued a joint warning. They revealed that China is expanding information gathering by using online platforms to target former and current officials, military personnel, government employees, and agencies in various countries. They warned that people suspected of ties to Chinese intelligence are posing as fake consulting firms, headhunters, or academic institutions to approach targets. The targets are also diverse. It included former military officers, intelligence agents, information department staff, defense researchers, think tank members, and journalists. Their methods are known to be relatively sophisticated. Instead of asking for classified information from the start, they would first approach people for research consulting, report writing, or interview requests, and then gradually ask for more sensitive information. Five Eyes disclosed that they initially offered a few $100s for low confidentiality materials, then increased rewards to several $1,000s for more valuable information. It is known that the higher the value of the information, such as materials containing military trends, government policies, or security-related information, the greater the financial reward offered. The Chinese government has completely denied these allegations. However, intelligence agencies in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia have long seen China's intelligence gathering as a major security threat. It is also noteworthy that these activities are not limited to the online space. Repeated reports indicate Chinese nationals in several countries have been caught photographing key national sites like military bases, airports, ports, government buildings, and communication facilities. Some countries have reported attempts to take photos with drones. Of course, the purpose and background may differ for each individual case. However, security authorities in each country are paying attention to the fact that these incidents are happening repeatedly. Several countries, including the United States and Japan, are reviewing Chinese land purchases, information gathering, and access to key national facilities, increasing their response. However, China is strongly objecting to these claims. The Chinese government says overseas land buys, real estate investments, and business are typical international economic activities. They claim calling investments from a certain country a security threat is political. They also stress that Chinese overseas investment projects boost local economies, create jobs, and increase tax revenue and regional development in host countries. The Chinese government criticizes the US and Japan for suspecting China over security concerns without clear evidence. In particular, the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs has repeatedly stated that the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese companies and investors operating overseas should not be violated. They also claim that Chinese companies are conducting their business in compliance with international law and local regulations. They also argue that restricting Chinese capital for reasons of national security is an act of turning economic issues into political ones. Because of this, the positions of the United States, Japan, and China are currently very different. The United States and Japan insist that security measures should be strengthened for national security reasons, while China argues that normal investment activities are being linked to security threats. Therefore, it seems likely that this issue will continue to be a source of considerable controversy in the international community.